welcome everybody to our episode of the Surrogate Buzz. Today, we are going to be talking about what happens after you apply to become a surrogate. So this is a very common question that we get, and we want to make sure that we kind of touch base with you, help you understand the process of whenever you hit submit on that button to apply and what happens afterwards. We are with our one and only intake director, Jennifer. So thank you, Jennifer, for being here with us. Yes. Jennifer has a wealth of knowledge in this department. She does this every single day. I handed the baton to her a few years ago. So we're going to talk with Jennifer, and she's just going to help you guys understand what we need to do when applying to be a surrogate. So yay. Happy to have you, Jen.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So someone submits an application. They're excited to become a surrogate. They've probably Googled and done their research. So what actually happens once somebody hits submit?
Yeah. So once they hit submit, their application just doesn't disappear and go into the blue, right?
That's what they think, right? I know.
So it doesn't just drop off somewhere. It's going to come straight over to us. We're going to review the application, make sure, they're eligible to be a surrogate based off of like our safety and guidelines with the ASRM guidelines, right? To make sure that, not only is it safe for them, but that they can do an IVF surrogacy journey because it is different than your own, right? So you might
absolutely.
feel like, oh yeah, I can have another pregnancy. I've had 8 kids. Everything's great. Yeah, maybe not so much for an IVF journey, right? So we're going to take a close look at that surrogate application and see like if there's anything like maybe they can work on with BMI. We're happy to work on and help with BMI, but there are some things that just might not let you qualify anymore to be a surrogate. But we're still going to reach out to you, as a potential surrogate and go over those things with you and explain the why, because we don't want you to just, send your application out and then you never hear from anyone again, right? So we're going to have that
Or is it a robot? Am I going to get like a generated text or a generated call or,
Right.
what if I don't hear anything at all? It's kind of you take this step, right? To like, okay, I'm finally going to do this. I'm finally going to apply. It's like, okay, what happens? Yeah,
right, exactly. Yeah, because like the worst thing you want to do is take the time to do a full entire application and then crickets, right?
Yeah.
And then you're having to reach out to the agency like, hello, I submitted this a couple weeks ago. What's going on? Like that's not going to happen with us. We want to make sure, obviously weekends happen, right? I might not get a hold of you on a Saturday or Sunday, right? I might be sleeping in or something, but definitely, we do try within 24 hours once we get your application, because we want to take that time to review it too, because I don't want to call and just ask you the same questions that you've already answered, right?
Yeah.
So I get to know you a little bit before I give you that first initial intake call.
Yeah, because I think there's people who are across the board just different. Like sometimes you may talk to a friend and they're like, oh, hey, I did surrogacy. And you're like, surrogacy? I never thought about that. Let me look into that. Not something that you had envisioned before, but you're like, yeah, this sounds kind of interesting. Like I could do that. I had great pregnancies. And then you have the other side where it's like, no, I've thought about this for, years and years. I've wanted to help people and, I needed to have my own kids, or I just wasn't in a place in my life where I could do it, but like I've always wanted to do it. So I think there's, whatever your reason is for coming here or however long you've waited, you're taking that first step, right? So it is kind of, anxiety filled, like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to apply, like, know, and like, obviously I want to make sure as a surrogate, because I've been in that position, that when I reach out to the agency that I've finally decided on, or maybe I'm reaching out to multiple agencies, but like, what am I going to get? And, how is the process going to be? Because as we know, a lot of agencies are different.
Right. Yep.
And how they process that. So
absolutely.
So once you've gotten the application and they've, you've reached out, like what is that first call really for? And like, what can they expect on that call?
So that first initial call, we call it our intake call, right?
Okay.
So we're going to go over several different questions. Some might already be from the application, but we want to confirm, right?
Yeah.
You might have
Did you answer correctly?
Right. Yeah. Obviously probably nothing's changed within the last day, but maybe you typed something incorrectly. We're going to confirm, make sure all that's right. It's not a test though, right? There's no right or wrong answer. We're just going to go through all the different questions that's on there to make sure that you do qualify and that you can move forward, right? And so it's just to get that further knowledge to make sure they are, fully pre-qualified as far as we know. Obviously, we don't have medical records and things like that yet.
Right.
Right. But based off of their answers and responses, we'll know if they're able to take the next steps to get the profile created and things like that.
Yeah.
And just being realistic about expectations. We're going to go over our surrogate benefits package. We're going to see, give them a better understanding of what they can expect from their journey so that they're not blindsided at the end when they thought they were getting one thing, but really they're getting another thing.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And I think that's important too, because you're a real person. You've been through this many, many times. I'm sure on one of our podcasts, we'll go over, the staff and all of our journeys and experiences, because it's definitely a fun-filled conversation. But Jen has been a surrogate multiple times. So, I think it's important whenever a surrogate does submit an application and you call them, just to have that, hey, I've been in your shoes before. I know what you're going through. Don't be nervous or scared. I'm just here to have a real conversation. Right. There's a lot that the surrogacy process entails. So, when you're talking to them, and, it's good because you can give them your real life, process, and hey, this is how this is going to be. I'm not asking you about your BMI because I'm worried about, or I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. It's more hey, here's how what the criteria is to be a surrogate. And we want to make sure that if we're accepting you and if you move through this process, that you understand why and what it actually, why we need these things to be in place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And making sure it's the right time, right? Because maybe you just had a baby yourself, maybe you had a C-section, right? It might not be the right time. We can get your documents going, get you started, but you might not be eligible to transfer for a little bit. And so we want to have those expectations laid out so that it's not, this hurry up, get everything done. And then, oh, by the way, now you have to wait. Right? We're going to give you all those realistic expectations from the beginning of your timeline, what it's going to look like. Obviously we can't see into the future. We don't know, right? I don't know how quickly you're going to get matched. There's multiple times that I'm it might take a minute. And then next thing I know, they're matched the next week. And I'm okay, I can't call it. But, at the same time, at least they're given that idea of hey, based off of, your pregnancy history, your delivery history, this is what it should look like, you know?
Right.
Keeping those expectations real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to kind of piggyback off of that, and obviously talking about things that obviously not right timing, or maybe reasons that we see that maybe they cannot get accepted. So obviously coming into this process, many women think about the rejection piece, right? How should a surrogate think about that stage? Or this stage of the application process with the rejection in mind?
Rejections can happen, right? Let's say you had 5 C-sections. You can't be a surrogate with that many C-sections. Even though you might feel I can do 5 more pregnancies and be just fine, it's out of the ASRM guidelines, and we have to follow those guidelines because we need to make sure that the surrogates are safe, that the baby is safe, and all that. And sometimes it is a no. And I know that's hard, but it does happen. But you rather know then and at the beginning stages than after you've done so much document, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's we don't like to say no. No one likes to have to
course
tell
not.
someone
That's
no, right?
I say that all the time.
You have such a big heart. You want to be able to help intended parents have a child, and being told no yourself is not something you want to hear. But it does happen, but usually it's just if you're outside of the ASRM guidelines. There are, like I said, there are some things someone might come in with a higher BMI. We can help work on that. We're not going to turn you away and be oh, you don't meet it right now. Right?
Because right now, but
right
not
now
never.
You might not, but we all can lose weight. We all can get on a healthier journey and things like that and get to where we need to be. You know what I mean? And we're here to support, and we'll bring you in wherever your BMI is at, and we're going to help you get to where your BMI needs to be. Many of surrogates have done that just fine. So there are those right now cases where, no, you can't be a surrogate right now, but we're going to get you going. But then those hard no's, we're going to tell you up front. We're not going to wait until you complete everything and get your hopes all high and ready to go, and then be oh, just kidding, right? We should have told you this from the beginning, And
and sometimes you don't know. I would say to a surrogate out there who is thinking about applying, maybe you don't know what the criteria is, or maybe you are just wanting to see if maybe there's any workaround with your situation, or maybe something in your medical records. Like, obviously there's a lot of different pieces that go into this process, but my suggestion would be just apply. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, the application that we have on our website, it seems very detailed. It is a pretty quick, like, yes, no. There is some information, obviously, that you'll need to type into. But I would say, at the very least, just apply. And that way, Jennifer can talk to you and decide if she feels like you're the right candidate to move forward, or if there's something that would prevent you from becoming that, becoming a surrogate, or, just moving through the process. But I would say, you don't know until you know. So always apply, talk to Jennifer. Like Jennifer said, the ASRM guidelines are set in place to make sure that everybody is, safe and healthy. And we do abide by those. And most, ethical agencies, I would say, do. But you just never know. There might be something that happened that maybe we're like, oh, okay, we can work around this and, give you the opportunity, because it is sad. You have this person who is willing to, give up their life and their body to have a baby for somebody. It might just not be the right candidate because of how controlled and least risky this situation needs to be.
Absolutely. And one great thing about, like, with our team is that we do all conversate with each other. And so if I get someone in that I'm like, I just don't know. I feel like maybe we can work around this. Maybe we can't. We definitely reach out to client services all the time. And I'm like, hey, so here's the situation. What are we thinking? Because we need to have that conversation, because sometimes there is. We absolutely can bring the surrogate on board. And other times it is that hard no. And then I circle back around to the surrogate and I let them know. So it's not just me, being like, no, not today. We put a lot of thought, because we want to make sure, the surrogate stays safe throughout her whole journey, and she's not, just going through it just to go through it and have issues later on in life, right?
Yeah, we definitely try to look at everybody as kind of a whole picture, and kind of look like, we work with so many different clinics, and every doctor is different, and this clinic is super strict, and this clinic is a little bit more open. So it's like, could we, and again, like we really try to give everybody a chance if at all possible. But sometimes, between their time and our time, it's like, do we fill out the application and have them have them go through this? And, we want to be respectful of everybody's time and energy in this process, because it can be a long process, and we never want you to, like you mentioned, get your hopes up and then, it never happens. So,
right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then why is the screening so detailed?
So the screening is so detailed because it's gonna protect the surrogate. It's gonna make sure that she's not gonna walk into this and have, complications, right? A lot of the information that we get while we're screening the surrogate is all the different, like, potential risks that she might run into, right? If she had, for example, gestational diabetes with insulin use, there's the chance that she's going to have that for her next pregnancy, right? Things like that. And it's like, okay, do you take that risk? Because that's going to put you at risk. That's going to put the baby at risk. And we don't want that to happen, right? As much as I'm sure the surrogate herself wants to help a family out, it just might not be safe for her, and then in turn her family, right?
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that the screening process is thorough, so that she's safe, the intended parents are safe throughout the whole journey, because it's not like this is only going to take a week and then you're done. It's a long process. So we have to really take a look at everything as a whole, and not just the want, right? Because, like, I want to be a surrogate again, but
I say that every day.
It's not happening.
I would be a surrogate forever.
All the time I'm like, I wonder if, and it's like, Jen, no, your time is done. You're still helping by, my profession, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's always so hard, right? And if a surrogate comes in and has some complications that could harm her, it's like, you have that passion and that drive, but you just might not be able to. And that screening process is going to help us get to that initially from the beginning, because just like you said, time. We don't want to waste the surrogate's time by just being like, oh yeah, let's go ahead and get all this stuff done, just so that in the end, it's a no.
Yeah.
Right.
And to me, two things like really stick out when it comes to the screening and being so detailed and doing our due diligence and making sure that everybody in this process is protected is one, the surrogate has a family, right? And as much as she wants to do this for somebody else, she also needs to be here for her children.
Absolutely.
And for her husband and or her family, or just that is most important, is her safety. And if somebody has had something prior that has that happened in their pregnancy and it's a high chance of reoccurrence, or maybe there's a complication that could potentially happen, like we need to make sure that she is safe.
Yeah.
And that her family is protected. That number one, like sticks out in my mind all day long. Number two is we are working with parents and that have struggled, right? For sometimes 5-10 years to have a child. So when they come into this process, which is very controlled, they want to know that the person that they're choosing has had a good, healthy background of having pregnancies, of delivering, with no complications, things like that, because they want to have a baby and they haven't been able to get there on their own, which is why they're here. So we also need to protect her, and we also need to protect the intended parents, and we need to protect their baby who she is carrying. So yeah, I'm with you. I would be a surrogate forever.
Right.
Could I be a surrogate? No. So it's like it's really hard mentally to understand that and to like come to terms with the fact that like either one, you can't be a surrogate in general, or two, maybe you've done a surrogacy journey and this is it for you.
Yeah.
Because this is a very special thing, and I will hold my surrogacy journeys like near and dear to my heart forever. And obviously I do this every day. So I feel blessed to be able to do this on the backside. But there is a little bit of that where it's like, oh, it's kind of sad that I can't, keep giving. But just know that like we really want to make sure that you're protected, your family's protected, and the intended parents. So we have so many different groups of people that were in this process, and it's not just about you or, applying for this position, but more just the protection and the safety of everybody that's involved.
Yeah, because the biggest thing is like cutting corners create risks. It doesn't.
Correct. Not in this situation.
Yeah. And it's like, why risk it? Like you said, they have a family to go home to at the end of the day, right? They need to be there for their family at the end of the day. So like, why add risk to you and your family by, trying to move things around to make it work?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's not, you know, we all know that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so how long would you say that this timeline typically takes? And what emotions are normal in the process of becoming a surrogate?
Oh my goodness. All the emotions are normal. Every single one.
It's like the movie.
Yep.
With all the emotions and they come up. It's like, oh wow, that's how you feel.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's definitely normal to feel nervous, uncertain, worried, all the different things. Patience, have some patience, because we're doing our due diligence, right? We're making sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted before we send out your surrogate profile for matching. We want to make sure we have gone through everything that we have gone through to make sure all the risks are mitigated. We don't have to worry about anything when we send out your profile. We got all your information needed, right? So going through all of the different emotions are totally fine. Normally, like, depending on how quickly you complete paperwork, you might have your paperwork done in a second, right?
Yeah.
But as far as like the matching process, we want to make sure that you're getting matched with intended parents that you're going to enjoy being with for a long time, because like we talked about earlier, it's not a quick journey. You're going to go through a lot of different things. So we want to make sure that the expectation is it's going to take some time. I don't disappear once your application's done and your profile goes out. I'm always around to talk with the surrogates, give updates. One great thing that we have, as is we have our support group meetings at every level of your journey, every stage. So you're able to, see each other face to face over Zoom and ask questions and get updates and whatnot. So you're not in the dark per se, but they're, things take time. It's like a hurry up and wait, right? With everything in life. Hurry up and wait. Get this done. Okay, now I'm going to have to wait a minute and then go, but it's totally fine to experience, impatience and everything like that.
The range of emotions.
And that excitement too, right? Because you got everything done. Your you're pre-qualified to get to that matching stage, right? So that happiness and that excitement obviously is going to be there too. And, but just keeping that patience that, sometimes things happen quickly and then other times it takes a little bit of time, and that's okay too.
Yeah. So would you say, I mean, obviously everybody's time frame is a little different because it depends on, how quickly it takes for you to fill out the application, which, as someone can imagine, the application is very detailed.
Right.
There is a lot of information that we need to know about you. But, if somebody is going through this process and they're filling it out kind of in a timely manner, what would you say a typical time frame for the surrogates when they fill out the application from the time they apply online till the time, let's just say, their profile is made available? Like, what does that time frame look like?
I would say typically if we were getting documents done quickly, it would probably take about a week.
Okay.
Like I said before, we're going to go through everything together, make sure everything looks good. But if you're submitting documents back, same day or the next day, we can typically have that surrogate interview and go over everything together, like the day after documents are completed. So I would say in about a week would be the typical turnaround time frame, just really depending on how quickly everything gets turned in.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the one thing that might put that timeline a little bit later would be, how long does it take us to get their medical records, right? The medical records piece is obviously, as everybody knows, a pain and probably the worst part of the application process. So if you're applying to be a surrogate and you have your records, that would be amazing. Or if you have any pool at your OB's office or your delivering hospital, like, that will help us kind of expedite that too. Because obviously we want to make sure that whatever's on your application is also listed in your medical records.
Right.
And I think that kind of pulls me into, if you're filling out the application, please be as honest and open as you possibly can.
Yes.
Like, maybe you had an abortion. Like, that's okay. But it has to be listed, right?
Right.
On, like, the pregnancy and delivery history, it has to be all pregnancies, right? So there might be some things that maybe, you're ashamed about, or maybe you're uncomfortable about. Like, definitely reach out to Jen and, have that conversation. Look, nobody's perfect. Everybody has a life and, things happen. But we just need to make sure that the information that we are presenting to intended parents is accurate and also matches your
medical
history
records,
in your medical records. So I would say, the medical record piece, like I mentioned, is definitely a little bit more involved. But if you have any pull, like, please help us. I mean, we do have a records, department, so we will be helping you get those. But I always tell a surrogate, like, if you've seen the same OB for your 3 pregnancies, like, you probably know your OB, or you probably know the person who works at the front office. Like, if you could just give them a call, they already usually, already have you fill out the form, especially if you've delivered recently, where they can send you the records. But definitely any help that you can have in regards to that will definitely help expedite that time frame as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because even if your profile is put out within that first week, you might not get matched for a while if we're waiting on those medical records, because some of the IVF clinics, they want to review those records before that match meeting is even happening.
Yeah. And we want to make sure that, like, everything is accurate, right?
Exactly.
Like, I feel like when you deliver, you're like, oh no, everything was normal and healthy and everything. But maybe you had a high blood pressure reading, or maybe something happened where, it was normal and healthy, that you remember, but there's also other things where in your normal life, they don't matter, right? Because you have a healthy child who is thriving, and you're living and you're healthy, and you had, everything was normal. But in this process, everything is looked at with a fine-tooth comb. Yeah. So there might be something that comes up and you're like, oh, yeah, you're right. I did remember that. I had 2 blood pressure readings that were higher, just anything like that. Or if you remember something, or, just let us know, just so that we can be aware that something might be listed in there. Okay, maybe I didn't have gestational diabetes, but maybe I failed my 1 hour. Yeah. And I passed my 3 hour. Just little things like that, because once we do review the medical records, obviously we're not medical professionals. We're reviewing just based off of being in the industry for 28 years, knowing what to look for and saying, okay, yes, we think this is a candidate that we can move forward with. But when we send those to the IVF clinic, we want to be aware and obviously protect the intended parents to say, like, yes, we feel that she is a good candidate and that we think she would get cleared at your clinic. We're not wasting somebody's time.
Right.
And then we know, like, okay, for the most part, like, everything that we've seen is clear. And so there should be no issue at the clinic. But maybe, there are some things. It's obviously everybody's medical records are hard. You talk to your doctor, everything gets listed. And you're like, wait, what? Why is that in my records? I never said that. And it's like, well, you probably did because your doctor noted it in the records,
Right. Right. And it's making sure we have that transparency as well to the intended parents that, we do know everything that's in there. So they feel more comfortable knowing that everything's been completely reviewed and we're not like, I don't know, here she is, let me know how the journey goes.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Because you're talking to the surrogate and you're kind of handing it off to client services, right? And then we're presenting the surrogate based off of the information that she has provided and that the information she has provided to you. So we want to make sure that the information that is in there is completely accurate to the best of our ability, to the best of the surrogate's ability, and that also has to match the records. Right. So we want to make sure that as a whole, as a package, this is who you are and that's what we're presenting, not this is who we're presenting. And then, 3 weeks down the line, we find out X, Y, and Z because of something that maybe wasn't presented to us. And that's why I would say just be open and honest.
Yes.
Nothing hides in medical records.
Right.
Just going to be honest.
Nothing.
Nothing
Everything's
hides.
in there.
Psychological, medical, all of that is usually listed in your medical records because those are conversations that you had with your doctor.
Right.
So just be aware and be present when you're filling out the application. And again, if there's an issue or maybe something you're worried about, then just have a conversation with Jen. And then Jen can have a conversation with, our department and just say, hey, look, this is what's going on. Again, we're all here to help. We've all had our own journeys. Everybody that works at SAI, I think with the exception of like 2, have had their own journey, whether it's surrogate or intended parent. So we've all been down this road. We all understand, what it takes and things that might come up. So, anytime you ever have a question or you're concerned about something when going through the application process, definitely reach out so that we can help.
Yeah, because a lot of times there, like you said, there's some random things in your records that you're like, oh, I didn't even realize that. Like, and so just think about it. Think about, well, what did happen during my delivery? What happened at my last OB appointment that they said, hey, we're going to deliver today, right?
Yeah.
Different things like that. Dive into it a little bit because the more that we're aware and we're able to share that with each other and then to the intended parents, it makes it easier to just fly through those medical records once they come through instead of being like, oh, I had no idea, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say this is from living and learning and doing the whole medical records piece. I could talk about medical records probably for days. But if you don't have your medical records, I would suggest get them for yourself, get them for your children, because I don't know, most people don't know this, but a lot of OB or doctor's office, they do purge those after 5 to 7 years.
Yes.
So if you ever want your own records, not for the surrogacy process, just in general, like definitely get those because they will be gone. And we do kind of run into that sometimes with getting records. So just something to think about. I could talk about that for absolutely hours. Reviewed a lot of medical records. Okay, so what should someone do while they're waiting? So hypothetically, I fill out the application and my application gets approved and I am ready to go. My profile's out there being sharing. Like, what should I do while I'm waiting?
While you're waiting, definitely make sure that you're keeping in contact with myself as the intake coordinator, asking any questions that you have, asking for updates. If you're sitting on pins and needles being like, what's going on? Ask for updates. Yeah. If we have any updates, obviously we're going to share them. Big thing is definitely attending our support group meetings. They get to talk with all of our client services directors, and because there might be something happening behind the scenes that we just don't know. Yeah. Right. And
so, a lot of times it does happen.
And a lot of times we'll have surrogates come on there and they'll be like, anything for me? Like, how's my profile looking? And someone will be like, oh, actually, da. And I'm like, aren't you glad you showed up today? Right. Because I didn't know that was currently happening because it was something that happened that day. So, and it's always awesome to see like their face light up and be like, oh, yay, we're having some movement, So definitely, keep in contact with me and ask those questions and whatnot, and do practice that patience, because like we were just talking about forever with medical records, we got to get those records in, for the IVF clinic and whatnot to get that pre-approval. So, but yeah, just keeping in that contact, attending those support group meetings, and reaching out for your updates.
Yeah. And I think it's good to, for anyone who is signing up or who doesn't, understand this process, we have a support group meeting, and you touched on this a little bit earlier. We have a support group meeting for anyone who is with our agency at all steps of the process. So you have unmatched, you have matched, you have cycling and pregnant, you have delivered. So it's like, we want to make sure that the people that you're with in those support groups are people who are going through the same thing as you, right?
Right.
It's an easy way to kind of bounce things off, or you hear somebody's story and you're like, oh my gosh, that happened to me. Maybe you're not that outgoing person who wants to, lay it on the line and tell everybody what you're doing. But it's nice whenever you feel like, okay, this person is going through the same thing as I am. They've been waiting for a few months. I've been waiting for a few months. Oh, I wonder what her profile looks like. We have, another support group, which is a closed thing for, surrogates to reach out to each other. So it's always nice to have that. Personally, I have relationships from surrogates that I was in support group with, even before I started working here. They're like, I have so many good memories from support group and just hearing people, and you just never know what somebody's going through. Or maybe you're going through something, maybe you had a failed transfer, later down the line. Whatever it is, it's just that support group is so, so important. And I think for the unmatched surrogates, it's even more important because they have signed up and they're just kind of like waiting.
Yeah, what do I do now?
There's nothing going on. We're like, if you're matched, you're going through the screening process. If you're cycling, you're about to have a transfer. If you're pregnant, obviously you're, you've been going through the process. So you're already like in it.
Right.
But for the unmatched girls, they are just kind of waiting and sitting back and like, oh my gosh, is someone going to pick me? I remember all the time when I was waiting to be matched, like, oh my gosh, what if somebody doesn't like me? Am I going to get chosen? Like, it's just all these like fears and anxiety and, the patience piece, which none of us have.
Right.
And so it's cool to get on there. You do get to meet the client services directors. We usually try to have one or two present on those calls just so that we can give updates on our end. Yep. Hey, here's what we're seeing. Here's what we're seeing in the industry. Here's what the clinics are looking for. If your BMI is on the higher side, please make sure you keep that in check. Always note, because the things that the guidelines and the criteria that the clinic is requesting is set for a reason, right? And we want to make sure that, okay, like you said, like your profile is up to date and current. And just because your profile was made available doesn't mean that it's untouchable. Any little thing that changes, reach out to Jennifer, reach out to client services director. Hey, I know you're matching me. I just wanted to let you know I lost 5 pounds. I always tell the girls, even if it's 2 pounds, change the profile because it might take you from a 29 to a 28.5, which might make a difference in an intended parent's eyes or in the clinic's criteria. So, always make sure that what we have is up to date. Maybe you have a new relationship. Maybe you don't have a relationship anymore. Maybe you have a new job. Like those things are always ever changing. But I truly think that the support during this process of not being matched is so, so important. And I love that we can all collaborate on those calls. I like that there's nobody in our agency that is untouchable.
Right.
If you've accepted them and they need to reach out to somebody else, they can do that. If they want to reach out to me and send me a text, hey, I just wanted to check. I know you're sharing my profile. Like, how is it going? Have you had anybody? I love when surrogates ask me, what can I do to make my profile more presentable?
Right.
Or do you think I should change my pictures? What do you think of my pictures? It's like, I think that's important. Like you know what it takes, right? As a surrogate at this point, because you've been through kind of like the early screening phase.
Right. And
you're aware of what your profile looks like and how it's being perceived, So you can reach out to any of us at any time. We always try to like be there and support because we understand that this process is a waiting game, right?
Right.
Sometimes we match you in a week. Sometimes it takes 5 months. It really just depends on the intended parents that we have at that time and what their criteria is. So just know we're constantly sharing. And, it really just takes that one intended parent to be interested in your profile for us to move forward. So just be at peace with knowing that on the backside of the agency, there are a lot of moving parts, and we're trying our best to get everybody matched. Because believe me, the intended parents want to get matched just as quickly as you do.
Right.
So they're anxious, you're anxious. We're really trying to make sure that the matches that we create are good matches, not matching just to match, right? We don't want to just match you just to match you.
Yeah.
You filled out the questionnaire, and we know who you are willing to carry for. And if you have a preference, let us know that.
Yep.
Maybe you want a close relationship. Maybe you don't. Maybe you want somebody who's local to you that can come to appointments. Like, those things really help us in client services try to make the best matches possible.
Absolutely. And that's definitely one of the things we go over in the surrogate interview before the profiles release is, who are you hoping to match with?
Yeah.
Right? Because sometimes you just have this yearning, like, I really want to match with this specific intended parent because of maybe something that brought you to surrogacy, right? Maybe it's a single mom and you're like, I just really, really want that. Well, that doesn't mean that's the only intended parent you're going to match with, but maybe that's just like your personal preference. And then we can obviously talk about that, especially during those support group meetings. Like, you might be open to other intended parents, but that is your hope. And maybe a client services director is like, oh, I know exactly who to send your profile to now that you said that, right?
Totally.
And so it's like keeping those conversations open and joining those support group meetings. Like, you'll be surprised, like, things definitely happen because it's like you'll see the little light bulbs turn on, right? It's like, oh my gosh, you'd actually probably would be perfect with this match. And, and then a match meeting happens and you're like, oh, there we go, But if you're not on them, if you don't talk about it, if you don't have those conversations, we're not going to know.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's the more that we're having those conversations with each other, we can get that perfect match. So you do have a wonderful journey.
Yeah. The more we know about you,
exactly,
the more about your personality and just how you operate and really what you're looking for. Because as client services, we have met the intended parents. We know what their personalities are like. We have their profile. We know what they're looking for, maybe what their lifestyle is like. Maybe it's a lifestyle match. There's so many different things that go into this process. But the more we know, the better, because then we can help. If you're just open to everybody, that's great too.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
fine.
It doesn't have to be specific on, what exactly you're looking for, but just know that this process is carefully designed, right? Like, waiting to be matched is not actually a problem. We also need to make sure, like we touched on before, that safety comes first, right?
Right.
So many things in this process we need to control and make sure that everybody is safe and has a great journey.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
But it was so great chatting with you today.
Absolutely.
I'm so glad we got to talk about this. I think this is just a really important topic that if you're wanting to become a surrogate, that this is something that you want to know. What does my timeline look like? How does this work? Like, when you think about it, I think for intended parents and surrogates on both sides, it is very overwhelming.
It is.
You're thinking all these emotions. What if I get denied? What if this happens? How long is it going to take? How long am I going to put my life on hold for? Can I even do this? Oh my gosh, I want to do this so bad. What if I get denied? I think there's a lot that goes into it, and it can be very overwhelming. It really just takes a simple phone call, right? It takes a simple phone call, a simple online form to fill out. Obviously we can't talk on every agency. We just know our processes and how that works. So if you were to apply with us, this video is going to tell you exactly how that process is kind of going to go. But yeah, even if you don't want to fill out the application online and you just want to have just a really candid conversation, just call Jen.
Yeah.
Reach out to Jen. All of our information is listed online. So it's really easy to have that conversation, in my opinion. It just takes the first step.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because if you call in and hey, so questions, because I've gone through this or went through this with this one pregnancy, but this was fine. And you just have questions. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because you might get a really great answer at the end of the call.
Amen.
And then we just start the process right away, And so it's but if you don't ask, then you're not going to know.
Yeah. And who better than for Jen, who's been a surrogate like how many times? Like
4
times.
times.
Any of us, right? You could call him Buzz, but Jen is your first step. So, but we appreciate you giving us all this information, and I'm sure the surrogates appreciate that as well.
Absolutely.
If you were interested in becoming a surrogate, definitely go to our website, surrogatealternatives.com. Click on the Become a Surrogate Mother tab and fill out that application. You will talk to Jen, which is so great, and I'm so excited for you. We're always accepting surrogates. We always have intended parents that are looking to match. So if you are interested, definitely take that first step. If you're interested in being an intended parent, click on the Intended Parent tab and and fill out that form. So we are here for you. We're here to support you, and we cannot wait to help you on this journey. So until next time, we will see you soon.